Saturday mornings used to be my favorite part of the week. I'd get up later than usual, make a cup of coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, and sit by the living room window scrolling through my phone. No rush, no noise, just the quiet hum of the fridge and the occasional sound of neighbors heading out for errands. That morning was no different until it was. I was somewhere between a video of a dog trying to sing, along with its owner, and an old friend's vacation pictures when I saw it. The post didn't even have her name tagged, but I knew instantly it was Lauren. You don't mistake the person you've shared a life with for anyone else. The setting was a restaurant I didn't recognize. Small, warm lighting, tables dressed like it was some kind of celebration. But it wasn't the place that caught my eye. It was her. She was sitting close, too close, to a man I had never seen before. The kind of close that makes you immediately wonder how long two people have been comfortable like that. Her hand was resting on his shoulder, casual but not casual. I knew that hand. I knew the way her fingers curled slightly when she wanted to signal connection, possession, even affection. The caption wasn't hers. It came from whoever posted it. But it might as well have been a knife. Special evening with special people. And there was a little red heart at the end. I blinked at it for a while, like maybe if I stared long enough it would rearrange itself into something innocent. My mind scrambled for explanations. He could be a coworker, a friend of a friend, someone from one of her charity events. Maybe there were other people just outside the frame, and it only looked in asterisk mate. I kept trying to shove my thoughts into one of those boxes that made this safe to think about. But the truth was, every box had holes in it. I zoomed in on the picture, pathetic, I know, looking for details. There was a wine glass near her hand, the kind she usually reserved for her favorite Pinot. She had on the deep blue dress I'd bought her last Christmas. She didn't wear that dress for just anyone. That dress was for occasions that mattered. By the time I pulled myself out of the rabbit hole, the coffee in my mug was cold. I set the phone face down on the table, took a deep breath, and told myself to just ask her about it. Later that day, I did. We were in the kitchen. She was unloading groceries from a paper bag, moving with that casual efficiency she always had. I mentioned that I'd seen a photo of her on social media. I didn't accuse, didn't even raise my voice. I just asked who the man was. Her eyes flicked toward me for half a second, just half a second, and then she smiled like I'd asked her what she wanted for dinner. She didn't answer the question. Instead, she tilted her head, leaned against the counter and said, "You've been really distant lately, Jason. Is everything okay with you?" It threw me off balance. I tried to steer it back. "No, I mean the guy in the photo." She cut me off with a sigh, like I'd missed the point entirely. "It's not about the photo. It's about us. I feel like you're somewhere else lately. Distracted. I've been trying to reach you and you're not there. Do you even notice when I'm in the room?" I just stood there, holding a box of pasta I'd been about to put away, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. Somehow we'd gone from me asking about an unexplained man to me being interrogated about my level of attentiveness. And she was good at it. So good that within minutes I was thinking about the times I'd stayed late at work, the nights I'd been too tired to watch a movie with her, the mornings when I'd left before she was awake. By the time she wrapped it up, I was apologizing for, I'm not even sure what, for working too much, for not reading her mind, for not knowing the right thing to say in the moment. We moved on, or at least she did. She talked about dinner plans for the week, about how she wanted to get new curtains for the living room, and eventually about the weekend trip she was thinking of taking with some friends. I nodded along, my mind still caught on that photograph. It stayed with me all afternoon. Even when we were sitting on the couch later, her feet tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, I could still see her hand on that man's shoulder. I could still see the easy, relaxed smile she had in that picture. The kind she hadn't aimed at me in a long time. That night, I pretended to watch TV, but I was really just watching her reflection in the darkened screen. The way she tilted her phone away from me without even thinking about it. The faint smirk at something she read. The way she didn't once look over to see if I was paying attention. When we went to bed, she fell asleep quickly. I didn't. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that kitchen conversation. How effortlessly she'd moved the spotlight off herself and onto me. How she turned a simple, direct question into a critique of my behavior. And how I'd let her do it. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I realized what bothered me most wasn't just the picture. It was how natural that deflection had been for her. Like she'd done it before. Like this wasn't the first time she'd steered me away from something she didn't want to answer. And that thought was worse than the photo itself. The day I saw that photo, something inside me clicked into a gear I didn't know I had. Not rage. More like a quiet investigator waking up in my chest. I made coffee, sat at the table, and let the last few months spool out like tape. The more I rewound, the more the static cleared, and the picture got uncomfortably sharp. It started with the business trips. She'd pack light but dress like a magazine ad. Heels slid into a shoe bag. The blue dress I bought her hidden under a blazer. She said she was going to Davenport 3 hours away because our firm's doing outreach there. I remember nodding, saying something supportive, and later Googling her company with the city name. No office, no satellite, not even a job posting within 100 miles. When I showed her the search, she laughed and said I must have spelled it wrong, then asked if I could pick up dry cleaning because she was slammed. I let it drop. I didn't like the way it felt to hold it. Her phone turned into a locked door. There was a time when it sat face up on the coffee table, buzzing with the kind of nothing that couples share. Memes? Dinner plans? Did you see this? Lately, it lived in her pocket, always face down if it ever surfaced. The notifications went silent. She would tilt the screen away as if my eyes were bright light. I told myself I respected privacy. I also told myself I didn't need to earn trust one thought we already had. The truth is, I started counting minutes between the little flashes of light, like a man tracking thunder after lightning. The calls on the balcony began in late spring, right around when nights were warm enough to step outside barefoot. She'd take her wine, say she needed fresh air, and slide the door shut behind her. From the kitchen I'd see her pace, lips moving, voice low enough that the cicadas swallowed it. Sometimes she just listened, that intent, tilted head smile on her face, listening like someone who's being chosen. When I'd step outside to bring her a sweater, she'd flinch like I'd snuck up on her, cover the mic with her palm and say, "I'll call you back." Then to me, work, always work, the vaguest word that ever existed. Then came the evening runs. She used to hate running, joked that the only reason to move that fast was if a bear was behind you. Suddenly she was a sunset jogger, lacing up after dinner and promising a quick 3 miles. Nearly every time she came back an hour and a half later, hair damp, cheeks flushed, a perfume trailing her that wasn't hers. Not floral, not the citrus she liked. Something darker, musky, like a borrowed shadow. She said she'd stopped at the pharmacy at the Riverwalk at a friend's. She said a lot of things that placed her everywhere and nowhere. Money started moving in small ways. A necklace I hadn't seen before, a bag that didn't look like a discount. It was on sale, she'd say, or a gift from Ashley. Naming a friend who never once gave me eye contact long enough to corroborate anything. Receipts vanished. Packages arrived addressed to variations of her name. Middle initial swapped, nickname used like a disguise. She'd joke about reward points, about luck, about manifesting. I did the math anyway and came up short. When I offered to go half on her new shoes, she waved me off like a kid reaching for a stovetop. "It's covered," she said, already walking away. There were smaller things, and somehow they cut deeper. Our framed photo from Cannon Beach migrated from the mantel to a hallway shelf, then to a box, so the sun doesn't fade it. Our calendar slipped from our plans to her calendar and my calendar. 2 parallel tracks that only met for birthdays. She turned down a weekend with my parents because of deadlines, then posted a story of mimosas with friends I hadn't met. The caption was a field of glittering emojis and an inside joke that didn't include me. Her social media changed like a room you don't notice getting darker until you trip. Old photos of us quietly disappeared. First the anniversaries, then the beach trip, then the picture where we looked the most like a team. She said she was curating. I said I didn't realize we were a brand. The one photo she kept was the one that played safe. Just a sunrise over water, no people, no proof. On her profile, she became a solo act, a series of poses in flattering light, tagged at places I hadn't been invited to see in person. Even the way she touched me shifted. Not gone, just edited. Hugs became tap-tap-pats. Kisses became checkmarks. When she held my hand, her fingers rested lightly, like someone hovering over a button they might press later. In bed, she rolled to the far edge and called it heat, though the nights were still cool. I asked if everything was okay, and she said I was imagining things, and then asked if I'd remembered to mail the rent. The conversation ended up about envelopes, not us. I found a receipt crumpled at the bottom of the trash one Tuesday. A bar I'd never heard of. 2 cocktails I couldn't pronounce. A timestamp that overlapped with her late meeting. I took a photo of it, then deleted the photo, then took another. Evidence felt heavy in my pocket, like a stone I wasn't sure I should throw. When I asked how the meeting went, she said productive without looking up. I said that's great, like a man reading from a script without stage directions. There were moments of kindness, and those muddled me worst of all. She'd bring home my favorite dark chocolate, or fold my laundry with a neatness that felt almost like apology. She'd laugh at a joke of mine that wasn't funny. She'd recommend a podcast about boundaries. It was as if she were wrapping our life in tissue paper while packing it up, careful not to break anything she had already decided she couldn't keep. Her stories started coming preloaded with alibis. If she mentioned a coworker, she'd add a detail I didn't ask for. The coworker's cat's name, the exact street the coworker lived on, how the restaurant had a mural of a whale. The specifics felt like confetti, bright, distracting, and impossible to gather into something meaningful. I tried to trust the sound of her voice. It used to be home. Lately it sounded like a hallway between doors. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Stress, burnout, restlessness. Maybe we were both on autopilot and she was simply drifting toward the first bright thing that looked like an exit. But every time I tried to believe the soft version, something hard would knock against my ankle. A late-night text tone. A do not disturb moon on her lock screen. A Lyft charge from a neighborhood we never visit. Each small thud said the same thing, wake up. By the time I circled back to the photo from the restaurant, I didn't need a caption to tell me what I was looking at. I was seeing the shape of a story I hadn't written. A story that had cast me as the quiet extra in the corner, while the leads whispered their lines on a balcony somewhere. I didn't rage. I didn't even cry. I sat very still and let the pattern reveal itself. The trips to a city without an office, the turned screen, the balcony calls, the long runs. The new things with old excuses, the sudden generosity that felt like hush money, the careful subtraction of us from the places people could see. And once you see a pattern, it doesn't unsee you. Keeps tapping your shoulder until you say its name. It follows you into the shower, into the car, into the pauses between songs on the radio, and it clears its throat whenever you try to talk yourself out of what you already know. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. I just opened a blank note on my phone and started a list. Dates, places, little details that would sound petty if I spoke them but felt like coordinates now. Davenport, no office. Balcony calls, 10:41 p.m. Laughing. Run nights. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. New necklace. Gift. No card. Photo of us moved, then gone. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even planning a confrontation. I was planning to be certain. That's the only gift I could give myself in that moment. The promise that when the time came, I wouldn't be arguing with gaslight. I'd be speaking from ground that didn't move. By late afternoon, the coffee had gone cold again. I poured it down the sink, listening to the faint rattle of the drain. Outside, the neighborhood kids chalked a hopscotch grid across the sidewalk, numbers connected by squares. I watched them jump forward 1 foot, 2 feet, pause, pivot. It looked like a map of the last few months. Hop, skip, step back, leap. I stood there at the window and told myself the truth quietly, like a secret I could finally afford to hear. Something was happening, and whether I wanted it or not, I was wide awake for it. A week after the photo, the list in my phone had grown longer. I'd been cataloging things quietly, the way you might count cracks in a ceiling before deciding whether the roof needs replacing. But suspicion, no matter how neatly you write it down, is still just suspicion. You can hold it like a rock, feel its weight, know it's there, but it's not the same as watching it drop. The proof came on a night I wasn't expecting. A mutual friend, someone I hadn't seen in months, invited me to a small gathering at his place in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, just a backyard cookout, a few drinks, maybe a fire pit if the evening turned cool. Lauren said she'd be busy with errands and probably wouldn't make it. I didn't press. At that point, her version of busy had stopped resembling mine, and I was past pretending I could line the two up. I arrived early, shook hands, accepted a beer I didn't particularly want. The evening was pleasant enough. The scent of grilled chicken, faint music from a Bluetooth speaker, the low hum of overlapping conversations. People drifted between the kitchen and the patio, faces familiar and friendly enough that I could relax for a while. At some point, the air in the living room got too warm, and I stepped outside for a breather. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the yard in a soft twilight. A few solar garden lights traced the edges of the lawn, their glow just bright enough to catch movement in the darker corners. That's when I saw them. Lauren and the man from the restaurant photo. They were in a shadowed corner near the side fence, half hidden behind a row of overgrown shrubs. She was pressed against him, her hands at the back of his neck, his fingers curved against her waist. They kissed like no one else existed. Not furtively, not in the jittery way people do when they're afraid of being caught. Openly, steadily, like they'd done it 100 times and had no reason to stop. For a moment, I simply froze. Not out of disbelief, because the second my brain registered what I was seeing, every rationalization I'd clung to over the last few months evaporated. But because of the strange calm that settled over me. I expected heat, rage, the thud of my own pulse in my ears. Instead, there was a kind of quiet. She didn't see me, neither did he. I was close enough to hear the small, private sounds between them, close enough to see the way her eyes stayed closed even when they broke for air. I thought about stepping forward, announcing myself, forcing them apart. But the moment didn't need my voice to be true. It was true on its own. I turned and walked back toward the house. No dramatic stomping, no slammed doors. Just steps measured enough to keep my breathing steady. Inside, laughter swelled from the kitchen. Someone asked me if I wanted another drink, and I shook my head, already reaching for my jacket. My friend caught my eye from across the room, but I must have looked like a man mid-thought because he didn't stop me. On the drive home, I didn't replay the kiss. I didn't need to. It was etched now, filed under confirmed. What my mind did replay over and over was the list in my phone. Every item had just turned from theory to evidence. There was no room left for maybe. I didn't feel like a man who'd lost something in that moment. I felt like someone who'd found the answer to a question he'd been too afraid to write down. I'd already decided, though maybe not consciously, that I wouldn't confront her right away. Not that night. There was more to do, more to prepare. When I pulled into our driveway, the porch light was off. The house looked exactly as it had when I left, but it felt different. I knew, with the same certainty you know a locked door will need the right key, that I was done walking into this place like it was home. Inside, I went straight to my desk. I didn't pour a drink or turn on the TV. I opened my laptop and a fresh document. The list from my phone was the first thing I copied over. Then I added a new entry, with the date and the words. Backyard, friend's house. Lauren with man from restaurant photo, kissing. No attempt to hide. I read it twice, saved it, and then, for the first time in months, I felt the faint edge of control. Not victory, this wasn't a win, but control. She might think she could deflect and misdirect forever. She might believe I was still balancing on the fence between doubt and certainty. She didn't know I'd already climbed down. I knew when I would leave. I knew what I'd take. And, maybe most importantly, I knew exactly who would be beside me when I did. That thought, that last part, wasn't about running into someone new overnight. It was about a truth I hadn't let myself fully consider until that moment. I'd been keeping someone at arm's length for years, someone who'd never given me a reason to doubt them, someone who'd been in my life long before Lauren started building her walls. I didn't know yet if I wanted to open that door, but I knew now that Lauren had locked hers from the inside. The rest of the night was quiet. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and lay in bed beside an empty pillow. When she came home hours later, I was still awake, still staring at the ceiling. I listened to the soft sounds of her moving through the dark, the creak of her dresser drawer, the sigh of the mattress as she settled in. She smelled faintly of perfume I'd never bought her. She whispered something, maybe good night, maybe nothing at all, and I didn't answer. In the dark, I could still see the garden lights behind her, the way they outlined the curve of her body leaning into his. That image didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just sat there, solid, undeniable, the last missing piece in a puzzle I hadn't wanted to finish. The morning after the garden, the morning after certainty. I woke up to a quiet house and a quiet mind. Not empty, not numb, just quiet. It felt like the silence right before a starter pistol, the kind of stillness that means the next sound changes everything. Lauren's side of the bed was already cold. She'd left early, a note propped against a water glass on her nightstand. Meeting, back late, don't wait up. The handwriting was rushed, a tilted trail of apology without an actual apology in it. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, a souvenir of how we communicated now. Minimum details, maximum distance. I made coffee and opened my laptop. The list I'd been keeping, the one that started as proof to myself that I wasn't losing it, became a checklist. Step 1 was boring, which helped. Boring meant rational. I logged into our bank accounts and downloaded statements. Joint checking, savings, the credit card we swore we'd only use for travel and then used for everything because life is friction and reward points are candy. PDFs went into a folder named with the date and a harmless label, home maintenance. I created a second folder, password protected, labeled with initials only I would recognize. Into that went **TS of messages, the restaurant photo, and a single-line entry about the kiss in the garden. I didn't add commentary. Judges read nouns and verbs, not adjectives. Next, I called a locksmith. Not to change locks yet, but to get quotes. Then an apartment locator service. Portland had been hovering in my head for years. A maybe that always got postponed by next quarter, or once things slow down. I wanted a place with light, near the river if possible, with a balcony big enough for 2 chairs and a stubborn fern. When the locator asked my timeline, I heard myself say, within the month, and the words felt like stepping onto a bridge I'd been building in my sleep. In between emails, I put on a load of laundry and folded towels with clinical precision. Method calmed me. For lunch, I ate leftovers standing up at the counter and reviewed our shared calendar. Her upcoming trips dotted the week like pushpins. I flagged them in my mind not as obstacles but as openings. You don't move during a storm. You wait for the low-pressure window. By mid-afternoon, I was on the phone with an attorney recommended by a coworker who'd navigated something similar last year. The receptionist's voice was efficient, almost soothing, the way a nurse's station stays calm no matter what's happening behind the curtain. Consult tomorrow, 10 a.m. Works, she said. I said I'd be there, then added, infidelity. She paused just long enough to show respect for the word and said, understood. I texted Emily. Took me 5 minutes to write a greeting that didn't sound like a flare G***N. Emily and I went way back, college lab partners turned occasional holiday texters, later co-workers for a messy year that ended with her taking a job across town. We'd stayed in touch the way people do when geography and life try to whittle your list down to 0, erratic, sincere, unglamorous. When Lauren started making me feel like furniture, Emily was a steady sentence at the end of a long paragraph. No confessions, no flirting, just oxygen. Can we grab coffee? I typed. I could use a friend. Her reply came while I was still deciding whether to send my message with a period or a question mark. Name the place. I'm free at 6. Before I left the house, I walked room to room with my phone, taking slow, **TS. Not because I wanted to keep our home, I was increasingly sure I didn't, but because I wanted a time-stamped memory of what existed before it dissolved into competing stories. Art on the wall we chose together. The couch we argued over and fell asleep on anyway. The mantle without our beach photo, a ghost outline where it had been. Around 5, Lauren texted, "Running late. Don't wait up." I answered with a thumbs up and nothing else. I turned off the living room lamps, locked the door, and drove to Bean Line, the cafe that always smells like cinnamon and printer paper. Emily was in a corner booth, hair up, sleeves pushed to her elbows, a legal pad open next to a mug. She stood to hug me. A quick, uncomplicated hug that steadied my pulse. "You look tired," she said softly, and because she wasn't trying to win an argument with it, the observation didn't sting. "I saw her," I said after we Saturday with him. Emily didn't twist her face into pity or outrage. She just held my eyes long enough to let me know I didn't have to decorate my sentences. "I'm sorry," she said, and let the silence do its job. I told her the short version. The photo, the list, the garden. The quiet I felt instead of the explosion I had rehearsed. When I finished, she tapped her pen once on the pad and asked, "So what do you need?" Plan, I realized. Not just a stack of files and a righteous heart. A plan that didn't rely on a dramatic confrontation or me bleeding out on the porch of my own life. "I'm moving," I said. "I've already started. Tourney tomorrow. I want it clean. No scenes." Emily nodded. "Good. What can I take off your plate?" Then, when I hesitated, "Let me help. I know a leasing agent who owes me a favor. And a moving crew that actually shows up on time." The word help should have embarrassed me. Didn't. It felt like someone handing me a hammer when I'd been trying to use a spoon. We spent an hour turning my loose intentions into bullet points. Secure personal documents, birth certificate, passport, titles, photograph valuables, freeze credit reports, open a personal checking account, redirect mail to a box I could close later, back up my phone, then turn off shared locations. Change the cloud password Lauren picked 3 years ago because it was the name of a dog she liked. Export 2 years of taxes. List subscriptions to cancel. Inventory the house room by room, not to fight over, but to prove what had been there if anyone decided to get creative. We talked logistics around the edges of softer things, what it means to leave without an apology in hand, how anger is a motivator but not a strategy, how to grieve while packing a box labeled kitchen. Emily didn't try to make me swear I'd be okay by Thursday. She didn't swear it for me. She wrote names and numbers, circled a few, and slid the page across like a map. "Portland?" she asked finally. A smile tucked into one corner of her mouth. "If I can swing it." "You can," she said. "You're already swinging." Back home, I opened the safe and removed what mattered. Papers into a manila envelope, then into my backpack. I took photos of serial numbers on electronics, the back of the TV, the guitar I barely knew how to play. I pulled my grandmother's ring, kept for a someday that never picked a date, from the small velvet box where Lauren never looked and slipped it into a pouch. The pouch into my sock drawer, then into the backpack with everything else that couldn't be replaced by a credit card. I didn't erase myself from the house. I just began to loosen the nails. That night I slept in the guest room, not as a statement but as rehearsal. The mattress was unimpressive. The view of the neighbor's fence was worse. Still, I slept. In the morning, I woke before my alarm and set a simple rule for the day. No arguments, no explanations. Information only. The attorney's office sat in a low building with too many shrubs out front. Inside, the walls were demoralizing beige and the chairs were sturdy in the way airline seats dream of being. My attorney, Rachel, shook my hand like she'd done this 1,000 times and would do it 1,000 more. When I said adultery, she didn't flinch. When I said I didn't want a war, she nodded and said, "Sometimes the cleanest cut still needs stitches." We went through the facts. I slid the folder across. She opened it like a book she already knew the ending to. "We'll file," she said. "We'll preserve assets. We'll request temporary orders. If she wants to contest, let her spend the money to do it." "What about the house?" I asked. "What do you want?" "I want out, but I don't want to be punished for leaving first." "Then we negotiate from ground we can defend," she said. You're not running. You're choosing safety. Safety. The word landed in my chest like a small, bright stone. By noon I'd signed the retainer, forwarded statements, and scheduled a notary. I ate a sandwich alone on a park bench and didn't cry. I watched a kid ride a scooter in wide, delighted circles and thought about momentum, how once it starts, you mostly just have to steer. Back at home, I opened a new email account and sent a test message to myself. I called the leasing agent Emily knew. He had a place opening near the river next week. Small, bright, a balcony that might actually fit a fern. Hold it with a deposit and proof of income, he said. I sent both within the hour. At 5, Lauren texted again. Late. Don't wait up. I answered with the same thumbs up. It felt like a stamp in a passport I wasn't going to use again. After dinner, I walked to the hardware store and bought moving boxes, tape, a fat black marker. I labeled the first box with a single word, books. The second, kitchen, Jason. The third I left blank for a minute, then wrote, keep. Keep didn't mean cling. It meant choose. I wasn't leaving to punish her. I was leaving to stop punishing myself. And once I'd said that, even silently, everything that followed felt less like escape and more like arrival. Filing made everything real in a way packing boxes hadn't. Paper has a weight to it. When Rachel clicked submit on the petition and slid a stamped copy across her desk to me, I felt a faint shake in my hands, like the after tremor of a door finally shutting. Temporary orders followed. Preserve assets. No new debt on joint accounts. No entering each other's private devices. Clean, clinical, signed by a judge whose signature looked like a lightning bolt. Lauren responded the way Rachel predicted. A long declaration about being blindsided, about my coldness, about feeling abandoned. She asked for temporary occupancy of the house and alimony to maintain status quo. Those words might have rattled me a month earlier. Now they read like the script of a movie I'd already seen. Discovery started. I turned over bank statements, the inventory photos, copies of texts I'd saved, and the note she left on the nightstand, meeting back late. Don't wait up. Rachel labeled exhibits